And I just want to say, I don't know if anybody noticed that my dad had a life sentence. So he had a murder dropped to a manslaughter and was able to come home off of that case. And we shared 20 years with him.
Like, even with that situation, a nigga ordered 50 perks, I think. $20 all the way out, that's $1,000. I wouldn't say I lost them. They was taken away.
I'm for real, man. Yeah, man. I'll wind y'all ass up, boy.
On Thanksgiving morning, 2024, a 52-year-old man lay dead on Booker Avenue in southwest Atlanta, gunned down in the early hours while families across the city prepared their holiday meals. 7 months later, his 32-year-old son would meet an equally brutal end, ambushed in a wooded area over $500 worth of pills. And the man left standing in the middle of this nightmare, forced to bury both his father and his brother within months of each other, is Atlanta rapper Jose Guapo. What you're about to discover goes beyond typical street violence, because when we trace back the circumstances of the father's death, you'll understand why some believed this wasn't random at all. The nightmare begins with understanding who Markel Antoine Cody, known as Shawty Giant or OG Giant, really was. Born around 1972, the elder Cody grew up in Atlanta during the height of the crack epidemic, when Southwest Atlanta's neighborhoods were being reshaped by the drug trade. His father struggled with addiction, his mother worked to hold things together, and young Markel found himself pulled into the streets by his late teens. He started fathering children early, built a reputation as a dealer in the neighborhood, and by 17 years old, he was already deeply embedded in the dangerous economy that defined Zone 3. But it was November 29, 1996 that would change everything and set in motion events that some believe would eventually circle back to claim his life. On that night, on Booker Avenue in southwest Atlanta, the 17-year-old Markel Antoine Cody shot and killed a man named Clarence Weaver during what witnesses described as a drug transaction that spiraled out of control. According to trial testimony, an argument erupted between the two men. Cody claimed self-defense, stating that Weaver reached for a weapon, forcing him to fire first to protect his own life. But when police arrived at the scene, they found Clarence Weaver bleeding from a bullet wound in his leg, with no gun anywhere near his body. The self-defense claim immediately looked questionable. 5 days later, on December 4, 1996, Weaver died from complications related to that gunshot wound. And just like that, a 17-year-old drug dealer became a killer, facing the full weight of Georgia's criminal justice system. The legal machinery moved with brutal efficiency. Indicted on June 17, 1997, Cody faced charges of malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault. His trial in February 1998 lasted just 3 days. The jury considered the evidence, deliberated, and delivered a split verdict. They acquitted him of malice murder, suggesting they believed there might not have been premeditation or intent to kill, but they convicted him of felony murder, with the aggravated assault serving as the underlying felony that resulted in Weaver's death. At just 20 years old, Markel Antoine Cody received a life sentence. For his young son, Jose Guapo, still in elementary school at the time, this meant growing up with a father behind bars.
Oh, well, my dad taught me everything I know. I mean, dogs around, circle around.
The years behind bars would test everything the elder Cody thought he knew about himself. Appeals followed, each one representing a glimmer of hope that dimmed when courts continued to uphold the conviction. A new trial was briefly granted in 1999, but quickly vacated before it could proceed. An out-of-time appeal in 2004 temporarily overturned the conviction, sending ripples of hope through the family. But the Georgia Supreme Court reinstated it on February 2, 2004, affirming the original trial court's decisions. The justices found sufficient evidence to support the jury's verdict and systematically rejected claims of instructional errors or ineffective counsel. It seemed that Markel Antoine Cody would spend the rest of his life in prison, and the family prepared themselves for this reality. Jose Guapo, now a teenager beginning to find his own path in music, resigned himself to the fact that prison visits might be the only relationship he would ever have with his father. But then, in 2007, something extraordinary happened. Through circumstances that remain somewhat unclear in available public records, the felony murder charge was reduced to manslaughter, whether through a plea agreement, further legal maneuverings, or prosecutorial discretion. After serving approximately a decade behind bars for Clarence Weaver's death, Markel Antoine Cody walked out of prison a free man. For Jose Guapo, now a young adult making waves in Atlanta's music scene, having his father back represented far more than just a family reunion. It was a second chance at building the relationship that prison had stolen from them during his most formative years. The elder Cody would spend 20 years as a free man after his release from prison, rebuilding his life and his reputation in the community. He became a respected OG in the neighborhood, an original gangster who had paid his dues to society and emerged on the other side with hard-earned wisdom to share with younger generations. He witnessed his children grow and mature, including Jose Guapo's steady rise in the music industry, from the rich kid's days through his solo career. He started new family legacies, mentored young men trying to avoid the traps he had fallen into, and seemed to have truly turned the page on his troubled past. For 20 years, it seemed like Markel Antoine Cody had successfully left his past behind and built something better. But the streets have a long memory. Grudges simmer for years, sometimes decades, waiting for the right moment to boil over. And on Thanksgiving morning, November 28, 2024, at approximately 3 in the morning, while families across Atlanta prepared their holiday meals, that past came calling with a vengeance. Police responded to reports of gunfire on the 1100 block of Booker Avenue Southwest, the same street, block, and exact location where Markel Antoine Cody had shot Clarence Weaver nearly 2 decades earlier on November 29, 1996. Officers arrived to find the now 52-year-old Cody with at least 1 gunshot wound to his body. Despite emergency medical efforts to save him, he was pronounced dead at the scene. The circumstances surrounding the killing raised immediate and chilling questions. Why was Markel Antoine Cody on Booker Avenue at 3 in the morning? Was this a chance encounter, a random robbery, a case of wrong place and wrong time? Or was this a planned meeting, someone from his past finally calling in a debt that was decades overdue? The coincidence of location seemed far too striking to ignore, too perfect to be a random chance. As of today, more than a year after the killing, no arrests have been made in Markel Antoine Cody's murder. No suspects have been publicly identified, and the case remains open. Just another unsolved homicide in Atlanta's 2024 tally of gun violence. One more statistic in a city struggling with persistent patterns of crime and human cost. For Jose Guapo and his family, this meant mourning without closure. His funeral on December 5, 2024 at the Dream Center in Decatur became a bittersweet celebration of his life. Jose Guapo stood before mourners, his voice breaking as he vowed to carry forward his father's name, to honor the lessons he had learned during those precious 2 decades they had together after his release from prison.
And I just want to say, I don't know if anybody noticed that my dad had a life sentence. So he had a murder dropped to a manslaughter and was able to come home off of that case. And we shared 20 years with him behind that case. We was told a life sentence. We didn't know we was gonna see our dad again or not. So just to have that blessing of them 20 years, I really appreciate that. And also, what was brought to my attention is that he did his job as far as his kids. He did what every father wanna do. See their kids grow up, strengthen up, and start their own family and blossom together. He did that. Shot John did that. And I'm forever grateful. And make sure by being your junior that I'm gonna take your name worldwide. I don't care. I'm just saying it. Hey, how you doing today? Yeah, Markel Cody Jr. I just want to thank everybody for coming out, all the family, the friends, everybody, man. Y'all know it's real love on this end. We very family oriented. It's like we've been taking hit after hit, back to back, but guess what? We ain't gonna question God. We're gonna push forward, and we're gonna make sure we stand tall, and we're gonna hold it down for each other, because that's how we was raised. You dig what I'm saying? Y'all have a good day after this funeral.
The rapper had already lost his mother approximately 2 years before his father's death in 2024, making this loss even more profound and compounding an already overwhelming burden of grief. But as devastating as this tragedy was, as much as it shattered the family and left them reeling with unanswered questions, it was only the beginning of the nightmare that would consume Jose Guapo's world over the next 7 months. Just 7 months after burying his father under circumstances that remain mysterious to this day, Jose Guapo would find himself planning another funeral. His brother, Brandon T. Cody, known in the streets as B-Shot, was about to become another statistic in Atlanta's ongoing crisis of violence. Born February 18, 1993, Brandon had grown up in the same Zone 3 neighborhoods that shaped his older brother's music and worldview. He was described by everyone who knew him as a protector, someone with a strong sense of justice who stood up for people who couldn't defend themselves. The kind of person who would step into a situation when someone was being bullied or taken advantage of, who believed in looking out for the underdog and making sure the vulnerable weren't victimized.
What type of person B-Shot was on a day-to-day basis, man?
Funny, protector, hustler, weed smoker, wanna on something. That's about it.
But protection only extends so far in streets where betrayal can come wrapped in the innocent guise of a simple transaction, where a routine deal can transform into an execution in the space of seconds. The evening of June 20th, 2025, Brandon Cody believed he was meeting someone to complete a straightforward drug transaction, $500 worth of pills. Instead, he was walking directly into a calculated ambush that would leave him dead in a wooded area and 3 people facing murder charges. The setup began around 8 p.m. when East Point police received reports of gunfire near 3200 Lakeview Place. Officers responding to the initial call discovered multiple shell castings scattered across a parking lot near Building 12, physical evidence of a violent confrontation that had just taken place. But when they searched the immediate area, they found no body, victim, or indication of who had been shot or where they might be. Expanding their search perimeter, police eventually located Brandon's red Chevrolet Malibu approximately a mile away from the initial shooting location. The vehicle had rolled down an embankment into a wooded area along the 3500 block of Washington Road, concealed by trees and undergrowth, hidden from casual view but not from a systematic police search. Brandon Cody sat slumped in the driver's seat, his body riddled with multiple bullet holes. Both front doors hung open wide, suggesting the killers had fled in desperate haste after completing their execution. Most tellingly, 2 cell phones lay on the floor under his feet, likely knocked there during the chaos and violence of the ambush, possibly falling from his hands or lap as he tried futilely to protect himself or escape. According to witness accounts provided to police and detailed in subsequent arrest warrants, this wasn't a random act of violence, not a robbery gone wrong in the traditional sense. This was a calculated setup, a premeditated ambush orchestrated by 3 individuals who saw an opportunity to steal $500 worth of pills without paying for them, and they made the conscious decision that they were willing to kill for it. The witness description was disturbingly specific and matched perfectly with the 3 people who would eventually be arrested. 2 men and 1 woman had orchestrated this ambush from start to finish. Javion Clemens, just 19 years old, was arrested at the scene immediately after the shooting. According to police warrants and initial reports, he allegedly confessed to his involvement in the robbery plot, admitting his role in luring Brandon Cody to his death. However, a family member would later contact media outlets to vigorously dispute this claim, asserting that no such confession ever took place and questioning the police narrative of events. Kaisha Chapman, 34 years old, was identified during the investigation as the 3rd participant and arrested on July 30, 2025. She was charged with murder and armed robbery for her role in Brandon Cody's death. Her involvement appeared to match the female participant described by witnesses, quite possibly the person who made the initial contact with Brandon Cody, who set up the deal, who lured him to that isolated location with promises of a simple transaction that would never be completed. But it was the 3rd suspect whose arrest revealed an even darker criminal history. Marcus Overstreet, 42 years old, was captured on July 22, 2025, after an intensive manhunt involving multiple law enforcement agencies working in coordination. The operation to apprehend Overstreet involved the DeKalb County Sheriff's Fugitive Unit, U.S. Marshals, and South Fulton Police SWAT team, all converging on an apartment complex on Flat Shoals Road in Union City, where he had been located. When officers closed in on his position and announced their presence, Overstreet made a desperate attempt to escape by breaking through a window, sustaining injuries in the process that required medical attention before he could be transported to jail and formally booked on charges. Police warrants identified Marcus Overstreet as the orchestrator of Brandon Cody's ambush, the mastermind who planned the robbery, coordinated the participants, and set up the lure that ultimately cost Brandon his life. But Overstreet's alleged crimes didn't begin and end with Brandon Cody's murder. Investigators also charged him with malice murder in connection with the December 22, 2024 killing of Mario Culver, a 36-year-old man from Lithonia whose death bore the hallmarks of someone trying to cover their tracks. In the Culver case, the victim had been shot at a residence in the 4400 block of Boulder Springs Cove in Ellenwood, but rather than leaving the body where the murder occurred, someone made the decision to transport Culver's corpse to Wilson Avenue in southeast Atlanta, where it was discovered inside a burning SUV. Marcus Overstreet's criminal history extended even further beyond these 2 murders. He faced charges for family violence incidents in October and November 2024, including simple assault on October 22nd and battery on November 26th. Fulton County had also issued active warrants for his arrest on charges of armed robbery, aggravated assault, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. The portrait that emerged from this criminal history was of a man deeply and repeatedly embedded in violent crime, someone for whom robbery, assault, and murder had become routine methods of operation rather than isolated incidents. Brandon's funeral on June 28, 2025 at St. Philip AME Church brought together family members, friends, and community members who were all struggling to comprehend how something like this could have happened. Jose Guapo stood before yet another gathering of mourners, this time honoring his brother instead of his father, processing a loss that seemed impossibly cruel in its timing and its circumstances.
Forever Be Shot, man. What was it like recording that song?
I don't know, cause I ain't no emotional guy like that, but it's still just like, damn, you know what I mean?
Jose Guapo channeled his overwhelming grief into music, making the conscious decision to refuse to exploit his family's tragedies for commercial gain or social media clout, while still finding ways to honor their memories through his artistic expression. He contributed emotionally raw tracks to Metro Boomin's album that served as tributes without crossing the line into sensationalism or exploitation. His project Son of a Giant took on profoundly deeper meaning after his father's death.
Good, right?
Come on, man. It ain't even about me. He got kids. You know what I'm saying? He has sisters, he has aunties. So when I'm doing this shit, I ain't doing this shit for me. I didn't come in the game doing this shit for me.
But as Jose Guapo struggled to make sense of these devastating losses and attempted to move forward with his career and his life, painful questions continued to linger in the background. And while Brandon's accused killers faced serious criminal charges and were being held without bond, the criminal justice process moved slowly, grinding forward at its own measured pace, offering little immediate sense of justice or closure to a family desperate for answers and accountability. As of February 2026, all 3 suspects in Brandon killing remain held without bond in Garish jails awaiting trial. Marcus Overstreet sits in DeKalb County Jail facing 2 separate murder charges for 2 different victims. Javion Clemens and Kaisha Chapman await their respective days in court, facing murder and armed robbery charges that could result in life sentences if convicted. But no trial dates have been publicly announced, no resolutions have emerged from the legal system, no pleas have been entered, no additional developments have been reported. The wheels of justice continue to turn slowly, especially in a jurisdiction dealing with Atlanta's persistent and ongoing challenges with violent crime and an overcrowded court system struggling to process the backlog of cases. For the Cody family, this means existing in yet another state of suspended grief, unable to fully process losses that haven't been formally adjudicated through the court system. It means waiting for trials that may not happen for months or even years. It means living with the knowledge that the people accused of killing Brandon are behind bars but haven't been convicted, that justice remains theoretical rather than actual, that closure continues to be delayed by a system that moves at its own frustrating pace. What makes these twin tragedies particularly significant beyond their immediate devastation is how they illuminate broader patterns and persistent problems in Atlanta's ongoing struggle with street violence and its human cost. The elder Cody's story demonstrates with painful clarity how the consequences of street involvement can echo and reverberate across entire decades, how a split-second decision made as a desperate 17-year-old can cast shadows that stretch across an entire lifetime and potentially contribute to circumstances that lead to death nearly 30 years later. The apparent randomness of his death, occurring almost 29 years after the incident that sent him to prison, speaks to the long and unforgiving memory of the streets and the way violence can circle back when you least expect it, when you think you finally escaped its reach and built something better. Brandon's death represents something equally troubling, but different in its implications: the complete erosion of value in human life when it comes to low-level drug transactions in certain communities. $500. The 3 suspects who planned and executed his ambush now face potential life sentences for an amount of money that represents essentially nothing in any meaningful economic sense. It's a calculation that makes absolutely no sense, economically, morally, rationally, or from any reasonable perspective. Yet it happens with disturbing and increasing frequency in cities across America, where poverty, lack of opportunity, easy access to firearms, and normalized violence create a toxic combination. The impact on Jose Guapo extends far beyond the immediate realm of personal grief and loss. Having already lost his mother approximately 2 years before his father's death in 2024, he now carries the burden of being the eldest surviving family member in his generation. He's responsible for 5 siblings from his father's side who are now looking to him for guidance, support, and leadership. He carries the weight of preserving a family legacy that has been repeatedly and violently scarred by street violence across multiple generations. His music, which is always drawn heavily from personal experience and street authenticity rather than manufactured personas or exaggerated claims, now carries additional emotional weight and resonance. When Jose Guapo raps about pain, grief, and resilience, he's speaking from a place of genuine experience that few artists can authentically claim. In interviews conducted following these devastating tragedies, Jose Guapo has consistently emphasized themes of resilience, family protection, and breaking destructive cycles while refusing to glorify violence or use his losses for cheap commercial exploitation. He speaks candidly about the need to break cycles of violence and retaliation that have consumed so many families in his community. He talks about learning from the mistakes that cost his father years behind bars and ultimately may have contributed to his death. He emphasizes being present and available for his siblings, making sure they understand that the street life that seems glamorous and appealing in music videos and social media posts carries costs that can never be fully repaid. What do you think about this case? Do you think Josie's father's death was revenge for Weaver's death? Let me know what you think in the comments section. Also, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.